Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast. Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Stephanie Grubbs. Coach Grubbs is currently an assistant strength conditioning coach for Houston Astros, making history as the first woman to hold this position in the organization. She brings over a decade of experience in strength conditioning across collegiate and professional sports. Before joining the Astros, Grubbs served as the assistant athletic director of sports performance at the University of Pittsburgh, director of Olympic sports strength conditioning at Mississippi State University, assistant director of Olympic sports strength conditioning at Clemson University, and served internships with West Virginia University and the University of Pittsburgh, and a seasonal role with the Pittsburgh Steelers in sports science and strength. Coach Grubbs played volleyball at West Virginia University, where she earned Big East all academic honors, and she holds a master's degree in human resource development with a minor in athletic leadership from Clemson University, a bachelor's degree in physical activity and sports sciences from West Virginia University, and certifications from the NSCA as a CSCS and other advanced credentials in sports performance. Known for her high-energy, athlete-centered approach, Grubbs emphasizes authenticity, mental performance, integration, and data-driven programming. Her philosophy focuses on creating value, fostering growth, and building resilient athletes prepared for competition demands. So welcome to the show, Coach.
Oh my gosh, what a time. I'm so excited to be here. And your backdrop is way cooler than mine. So it's giving me good Texas energy.
I hope so. It's a lifetime of collecting stuff, and then now that we're not riding horses so much, I didn't want it in the barn rotting, so it had to come into my office.
Heck yeah, I love it. Whoever this cowboy is behind me or behind you is fantastic.
That is Ray Hunt, and Ray Hunt's passed now, but I got to see him a few times when he was alive, and you want to talk about some incredible stuff. They traveled the country. It's weird how it all works out. I know you really don't care, but they traveled the country working with the worst horses you could put in a round pen. And people would try setting them up and bring horses that they knew would dang near kill these guys. And they were just so punchy. And they understood horses enough that they were able to get these things ridden, get their life turned around, and then move on to the next town. He's a legend, and he has a couple documentaries about him that are just fantastic. But anyways, that's who that is behind me.
I love it.
So you've got a little bit of break. You're out of season, but I can't hardly imagine things slow down too much. What does the off season look like for an a strength conditioning coach at the major league level?
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, this is my first off season and coming from a college sports background where I was historically overseeing all the sports. So we always had a sport in season, the fall, the spring, the summer, like you still have teams training and doing their thing. So it was very strange because everyone kept asking, like, Steph, what are you going to do in your off season? And I was like, we have an off season? Like I get downtime. It was a very foreign concept to me. It was much appreciated because when I took this position, and I'm sure a lot of people have ran into this, like I was with Pitt Volleyball. We were wrapping up the season. We ended up making it to the Final Four. So we played deep into the season in December. And then I started this position like pretty much a week or two later, like January 6th, I started with the Astros. And then it was getting ready to train, leave for spring training, and then straight back into season. So I was like in season for almost a whole calendar year. So that was pretty crazy, but I loved it. But a lot of travel. And so yeah, the off season, it's just so much like auditing. It's like, all right, what did I do well in my first big league season? What did I not do well? Where are areas for improvement? Just with a Major League Baseball season, it's unlike anything probably anyone's ever been a part of, especially for me, because you're playing 162 games in like 182 days. So it's just complete bonkers. And I have so much respect for our athletes being able to pretty much play every single day. You go through streaks of playing, and I didn't really know this until I fully like immersed myself into it. But we have 17 games in a row without an off day, 13 games in a row, 10 games in a row. So a lot of the guys in the off season, they may go back to like where they're from, whatever state. And that's the big difference with working with professional athletes, just the off season. They may have certain places they like to live that isn't that specific city. Even with the Steelers, like in the off season, as much as I love Pittsburgh because I'm from there, maybe they don't want to be there because of the snow and they can't throw a football or they can't play catch. So I think just being a resource to the athletes in the off season, if they aren't living here, really you're always programming and doing everything you can. Maybe you're going to where they're at. Like I visited a couple private facilities and build new relationships with them. And you're just trying to check in on guys and make sure they always have what they need. So you're just a resource to them in the off season. And yeah, I think for me, it's a lot of reflection of just my first season in the big leagues and what can I do better and how can I get ready and prepare for spring training and to run it back. So yeah, super excited to run it back in my second season with the Astros and yeah, just always being a resource for the athletes really in the off season.
What's the expectation for the athletes when the season's over and they do go back home? Is it rest and recovery for a while and then into general preparation mode? Do they work with trainers? How do you know that when you get them back from spring training, they're where they need to be to mitigate any injuries or any issues that may come up?
That's the one thing I've really enjoyed making the leap from college sports to professional sports being full time is you have guys that are like 21 to 35. You have a pretty big age gap. And I think the older guys do a really good job of trying to educate the young guys of what they need to do during the season and just kind of like preparing them for the off season. So at this level, they truly are pros. They get paid a couple bucks. So they do what they need to do. And sometimes for us as like we call it like the SM&P group, sports med and performance, we're resources to them. So usually it's a lot of like I'm constantly trying to read everything I can about recovery and performance and kind of what's the next big thing and just preparing myself because guys will ask me questions from like all different directions and it's my job to be a resource to them. But they do a great job. It's their job to be a professional athlete, so they do understand, especially as they're kind of in the big leagues for longer and longer. Like once you hit like that 5 year mark and beyond, it's you're just kind of collaborating and working with them to make sure they have what they need. And if they do have questions in the off season of like, do you think that it's good for me to do this or that? But I think in professional sports, it's great to build relationships. Like if they do have someone they go train with in a different state, like Florida or California, I try to do the best job of connecting with that person they're working with and building a relationship. I know some people maybe in the past they like have an ego and they're like, oh, I can't work with them. And I think the best thing that's worked well for me is just like putting myself out there and going and trying to like visit where they're training, build a relationship with who they're training with, and kind of working on a collaborative plan. But usually the guys, they have a pretty good understanding of what they need. But yeah, after any extremely long season, you're going to take a couple weeks off. Clearly, baseball is such a technical sport with hitting and throwing and this, that, and the other. So I think, yeah, they take a couple weeks off and then you slowly start to like get into the weight room, start to move your body. And then some of the other baseball specific stuff comes later on. But yeah, when you're throwing and playing catch for that many days in a row, for that many months of the season, taking a brief period of rest is super important.
And they have lives on top of baseball, so they're obligated to hang out with their family and do all the other things that come with being fathers and brothers and sons and all those things.
Yeah, most importantly, for sure. Like it's great whenever you hear guys, they're like, "Hey, I want to drop my daughter off at school before I come in and get my lift." That means a lot to me in the off season. I was like, you have to understand, we all like whether you're coaches or players, like we have a personal life and a professional life, and you want to make sure you're taking care of both and showing love to the kiddos. So yeah, that always fills my cup. I'm like, yes, you should take your daughter to school. That would be awesome. So yeah, it's great to hear that. We have really great players in that regard.
Going through all the stuff and everything you have out there through microdosing and your journaling and all that, it would lead to the sports science that I know you've delved into quite a bit. How are you able to integrate sports science? You're adjusting your sessions, you're in season, so you're trying to microdose, you're dealing with a professional who has an idea of what they need. Does this whole huge nucleus of parts come together to create a successful season for each individual athlete?
I think that's one thing that is very different as well from college and pro, just because I've worked in both. So it's kind of like the easiest way to separate my mind is when we are working with our players in the big league level, it's not just everyone working off of one template, one sheet, right? With the age gap that we have and what different guys are working on and where they're at in their career. It's really our job to sit down and have conversations with the guys, whether it is like now that I've been a full season with the guys, like you're going to visit them in the off season, maybe, or during spring training, you're talking about like, all right, what are our goals for this season? Even at the end of the last season, it's like, all right, what can we do better? So I think we're always just like program auditing in regards to the areas for improvement. And that's kind of where my mind's at right now in the off season is how can I audit my program and what we're doing from a conditioning and strength standpoint. And I think that's where the sports science pieces do come into play. When you're doing, whether it's microdosing strength training in season, clearly baseball's full of analytics in regards to like on field analytics for pitching and hitting. I'm sure you see it whenever you're watching games on TV, right? But we're program auditing in regards to like, all right, are we peaking at the right times when we set a deload week? Are we seeing that reflect in our numbers for Nordboard or force frame or the force plates? Or if you're using Dynamo for grip strength, if that's what you're doing, like done that with wrestling in the past, let's say. So using that sports science equipment really just to audit what your programming is actually facilitating the right response. And that's how I always think about it is I give the athlete a dose of something. How are they responding to that dose? Is that the stimulus that I'm aiming to give them at that time of the year? And we have to balance, like I said, we may be home for a week and then we're on the road for a week and it's back and forth and you're switching time zones and you're playing on turf and grass and this, that, and the other. So I think we have a lot of things that we kind of have to look at for a travel stress index. So kind of taking all those things into account. But yeah, I think the some of the different testing and assessment that we do just allows us to know, are we trending in the right direction? And I love the piece of equipment that we can use, whether it's once a week or like every day in training with GymAware. I think you get a lot of bang for your buck in that regard. And I think I've learned a lot over time when it comes to investing in the sports science equipment. Because I think early on, when say I was at Clemson from 2013 to 2018, it was like we'd just gotten a budget for sports science at that time. We're like, all right, let's try to get everything that we can get our hands on. And this is really great. And then when I went to Mississippi State, it was kind of an evolution of like, all right, what piece of equipment are we actually using to make decisions when it comes to practice and game time and training? And then I just continued to kind of again like audit my systems and processes. I went to Pitt and I was able to hire like a full-time director of sports science to bounce ideas off of. And now just being at this level, I think in the pro level, it's great if you can come in with experiences that are diverse. Like it was advantageous for me to build a lot of experience in S&C and sports science, or maybe you're building a lot of experience in S&C and return to play, but really try to don't be a one-trick pony, as what I was told early on in my career. Really try to bring as much value as you can to the team and the organization.
We dabbled in a little bit of sports science stuff last track season, and we kept track of grip strength for our throwers. It seemed to have paid off. As you're watching their grips go up and down, we would usually measure it a few times throughout a session. Usually when they came in, it seemed like it was cold, not very good. Then by the end of the session, hopefully they're close to normal or even a PR. It really gave us insight to where our throwers were before we sent them off to a meet and let them just cut loose. So there's obviously value in knowing what to use and when to check it. How do you just not get lost in it and forget that these are real people that want to have real conversations? And just because all the data you're pulling is saying this, they may be telling you something a little different and you have to weed through all of that.
I think it truly is. We all have to remember an art and science. Like we can't take away the art of the coaching eye, to your point. And I work with track and field at Clemson, so I love working with track and field because like what's working in the weight room based off the times that they're running and the distances that they're throwing and the heights that they're jumping and this, that, and the other. So it is from periodization standpoint, it made me such a better strength coach working with track and field. And I think that's where I really valued my experiences coming up in the field, working with a lot of different sports because it teaches you whether it's like track and field or let's say swim, when you're trying to peak at like ACC championships or SEC championships and NC2As, like I'm trying to build over time. I don't want to peak too early in the process or run my fastest times like super early in the indoor season and this, that, and the other. So but then also working with a lot of rotational sport athletes like baseball or softball or volleyball or tennis or golf. I think it's really allowed me to see through a lot of different lenses. But now, as I've kind of like gotten a little bit more specific working in one sport, I'm really grateful for all those experiences I had over time to kind of, whether you're learning about different injury sites that you may see in these different sports. My bias is always like try to, almost like when we tell high school athletes, like play as many sports as possible, develop coordination, flexibility, and this, that, and the other. It's like almost like as a strength coach, I feel the same way. Like work with as many sports as you can as you're young in your career, and then when you want to specify or pick a sport, you're able to do that and bring a whole heck of a lot of value.
I would agree with what you said about track and field. Like football's fun. It's fun to work with those football guys, but when you get in track
Definitely.
and field, it definitely makes your mind have to work. Like you said, you're trying to peak here, you're trying to get more performance here, and we're talking tenths of a second, hundreds of a second. You have to be on your game and you have to develop a great sense of communication with those athletes to help them reach what they want to get.
No, I even remember we had a really elite group of like track sprinters when I was at Clemson and Brianna Rollins. She had won a gold medal at the Olympics from for the hurdles. And when you have athletes that are just like competing at such a high level, and then you're getting some of these numbers in the weight room, it's like, all right, like Susie Q could clean 1.25 times her body weight and hit this velocity on the gym where it's like, all right, for women versus men and kind of setting different standards based off of that and correlating it with track times and things like that. I think it's really fun, and we had some super athletes when I was there, and I learned a lot about like, all right, there's a time and place to lift a lot of weight, but then also there's time and place to deload and move the bar really fast. And just running really fast, how that drives up your power numbers and your strength numbers in the weight room. It's like it's just insane when you see people sprinting that fast and how it correlates to a lot of stuff when it comes to training. So I think that was a really important time in development in my career for sure.
It seems like track and field will make you go back and look at your programming more so than anything else and try new ideas. I don't know why that is. That at least that is for me. It's like some of these things I didn't think I would ever do. Now I'm looking at with a whole different point of view.
I know I remember like when I was a graduate assistant working with track, and I actually in high school I did pole vault and I ran on like the 4x4. Track wasn't my favorite sport to like do as an athlete. 'Cause I played volleyball in college, but I knew it like keep me fit, and I was a gymnast back in the day. So they were like, "Oh, you can like find a way to invert yourself over the bar for pole vault." Track and field, it was like, all right, we talk about the throws, and it's like, all right, the heavier the implement, the stronger you need to be, the lighter, the more elastic, like a javelin thrower. I was like, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, you don't know what you don't know. That was me as like a GA, and that as you kind of peel back the layers. I remember I did the Bushneck Schneider track and field course with our track staff, and talking about plyometric training really helped me with the jumpers and the penultimate step and things like that. You may see that in basketball or whatever else. So I think it's been really, really cool for me to like, I think of track and field as like athletics, that's how where everything started. So yeah, I definitely look back at my time with track and it helped me a ton. Even to this day, working with like a sport like baseball and base running and sprint mechanics and a lot of the outfielders, like the movement they do out there versus the infielders. So yeah, let's go track and field. Even though I did not, I had to run the 800 at one point. I was like, this is like a really long sprint, and I don't know why people do this event. I was like, who put me in this? So yeah, shout out to the 800 runners that are just doing the long sprints. Sheesh.
You talking about that, it kind of leads me into things I've heard you say before. So you came from a small town in Western PA. There was probably, with you being a Division I volleyball player, there probably wasn't a ton of Division I kids going on. So your high school probably counted on you to do all this stuff, and they may have put you in a position where it was hard to really find what the authentic you was. But you talk about that a lot now. So how do you stay true to your authentic self in a position or life where people expect you to be a certain way, but that's not the way you may be?
I think I go back to just my parents, and how grateful I am for them to give me such a solid foundation of like my dad never had the opportunity to go to college. He was just a brick mason. He grew up on a farm and laid brick and block and never had the opportunity to go to college, but he had his own business, he ran his own masonry business, building homes. And my mom, like she was an accountant. So nothing with sports whatsoever, but it always kept me grounded the fact that I had the opportunity to one, play Division I sports, and then two, my parents creating an opportunity for me that they never had. And now even like the fact that I have the opportunity to work with some of the best baseball athletes in the world, it's just it keeps you have to reflect and stay grounded and grateful. And I just think about like my dad as like the hardest work ethic of all time. And my mom, I mean, she held us to a very high standard. She stayed at home and raised us for a long time before she got a job. So I think just the standards she set for us and expectations and just my dad being a really hard worker, you kind of look at it. I owe it to them to like continue to drive on and just have really high standards for myself. So yeah, got to shout out to your parents because they're the ones that raised you up to get to where you're at for sure.
Well, it sounds like you got a good mix of both of their talents. Hard worker in the trenches, dealing with it every day, but you have that intellectual mind of an accountant that now you can break the science out and be really interested by what you're seeing on spreadsheets.
And they're both left-handed. So I think that's kind of funny that I'm also left-handed. So maybe shout out to the lefties out there in the world. I know like sometimes when I'm working at different places, they're like, oh, you're left-handed. I like you. I was like, what? Like, is this a group that I didn't know about? Like a secret left-handed society? But I also like write left-handed, but I write left-handed. Yeah, I throw right-handed. So I do some stuff and like I bat right-handed. I serve volleyball right-handed, but bowl left-handed. So yeah, I'm just all over the map in that regard. So if there's any people like that out there, shout out to you for just being like me and being kind of strange.
Totally left field question. What dominant eye are you?
Left. Like I shoot. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's weird, I guess,
I
but
don't know what that means.
well,
What's
I
it
know,
mean?
I know for hitters, it puts you in an elite category, right?
Yeah.
You're left eye dominant, and you're in the right side of the box, so you're seeing the ball with your front eye. So as
Yeah.
the ball comes in, you're seeing it longer, and then and maybe it helped you in volleyball too because you're coming across your body, but you're able to pick the ball up
Yeah.
in your left eye, so maybe you're seeing it longer. It's just something I've noticed in really elite athletes. The eye dominance and how they swing plays a part in all of that.
What a time. I'm just finding this out now. So thank you. Shout out. Shout out.
I didn't realize it was important, and I had a chance to have Christy Ambrosi down, and she worked with some of our hitters way back in the day. So she played at UCLA, and then they won a gold in Sydney for softball, and she started going through that. And she was a left-handed hitter that was right eye dominant,
Oh,
and then so
wow.
she started talking about it, and then that's why you see the emergence of the open stance in softball
Yeah.
was so that the
Yeah.
right eye could come around, so they could pick it up faster than
Mhm.
if they were opposite eye dominant. So it's I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but it seems like high level athletes are almost opposite. That eye helps them tremendously, I guess.
Let's go. I don't know if I'm elite level, but I'm here with you, so that's a plus.
Well, nobody's ever considered me elite level, but you did play Division I volleyball and you did very well, and now you're in the pros coaching athletes. So I would definitely say that you found a way to be elite.
Doing okay.
So you were talking about looking back over the season and evaluating all this information and doing all the things you do. But I'd listened to, I think it was Captain and Coach's podcast that you did, and it was an amazing podcast, very well done. But you kind of touched on like intense journaling. Like you evaluate what you want to get done every day, what your goals are, what's holding you back, all of these things that I thought was really cool every day. And I'm a notebook nerd, I have them everywhere. I've never dug in that far, but it raised curiosity as to how did you get started with that and what drives you to keep that up? Are you seeing that much performance increase by doing that?
I met up with a good friend that works in the NWSL. The one good thing about baseball is you're traveling a lot. So you do kind of bump into some people in some cities, grab a coffee, and my friend, she had told me about the bullet journal is what I'm reading right now because now I've found myself, I have so many notebooks and I journal so much. And I'm like, all right, I need to find a better way of organizing my journaling for, let's say, at work versus even like at home projects versus meetings and so I think I've had to find a way to organize my mind through this bullet journal book that's been really, really great of ideally what needs to happen right now. Like what do I need to get done today? Like what's a non-negotiable? What is something that like I would like to get done, but there's no rush. And then what are things that are just ideally distractions to the day, like doom scrolling and things like that, that you like kind of want to do, but you know it's going to get in your way of getting those other two columns done, like what needs to get done. And then also what's like a passion project of yours almost. So if it's like, hey, I know I want to write a blog for somebody, but clearly that doesn't need to be like done today because I need to be working on planning for spring training, let's say, like that trumps everything. So I think just kind of putting things in categories. I try to do that in the morning or even the night before. But the bullet journal has been a really, really good reflective book of learning how to journal correctly. And then also just kind of like taking all these tasks because I know for me, I wake up or even like when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have all these things I have to get done. And that's why sometimes the night before I'm trying to write down like everything that needs to get done. And I'm putting them in these three categories of just being proactive and things like that. So I think, yeah, the bullet journal, I definitely give a shout out to that book because it's helped me organize my mind. And I'm sure like a lot of people listening to this podcast and you too, it's just like, you know, there's so much stuff personally, professionally, and then the random stuff that just pops up that you're like, how do I keep track of all of this? And I know like multitasking. I've talked with like a lot of mental performance coaches. They're like, well, multitasking is terrible. That means you're just doing like a subpar job at everything. So I'm like, all right, how can I compartmentalize when I'm working on something? I'm like fully honed in on that and giving it my all. But yeah, the bullet journals allowed me to. I'm only like a third of the way through it. I've really enjoyed it so far. So if you need help getting tasks done and getting organized, it's the book for you for sure.
I think when I first sat down and started doing notes on this a while back, you had a bunch of books you listed and what it affected you and what it helped you put some things together. And I think you listed Good to Great. And I actually bought that book because of you.
Yes.
I figured it would help me build questions. And I only sat down and started reading it like 2 months ago, but it was a great book. What from that book put things in perspective that you were able to use in your daily life? Because it's pretty unique on how it's written.
I would say when I took over as the director at Mississippi State, my first ever director role, oh my goodness. And when I took over at Pitt as the assistant AD, and I was over even more sports and people, Good to Great taught me patience. And I think I talked about it in the other podcast, but talking about, and if you've trained with a flywheel before, you know, like a K box, whatever it may be, the Kabuki one, whatever brand that you like out there in the world, the process of the flywheel concept and just getting that flywheel going, you know. And I thought when I took my first head job, I'd be like, I'd go in and everything would be like clicking on all cylinders in like a month, you know. I'm like, all right, I'm the director, I have this really good plan. Like I brought in this really cool playbook on my interview. Like I'm gonna get all these things done, staffing, new weight room, build out sports science, collaborate with all the performance departments. And man, I really try to tell people now when you take over a department or even like take a new job, the first year, it's tough. You know, it's really, really tough. And you have to give yourself a little bit of grace. I mean, there's not much room for error and especially professional sports. So if you do make a mistake, like it just can't happen again. You know, you can't afford to let that happen again in the workplace and maybe in college, like as you're learning and growing and coming up in different positions. Luckily, you have mentors and people that can kind of help you and guide you. So I'm grateful I kind of went through all those different steps before getting to this level. But yeah, the flywheel concept and Good to Great of just how much momentum and how much pushing it takes to get that wheel going. But once you get the wheel going and you build that momentum, it's perpetuating on its own because you build the systems and processes and hired the right people. But I think like if you're in a new head position and we're just a new position in and of itself and you're 6 months in and you're still really frustrated and you're like, did I make the right career move? Like this is really hard. Like you're just overthinking everything. Be patient. It's gonna be okay. Like just give it a year, you know, like see the position there for a year because that's the thought process of Good to Great, like the flywheel concept of it does take a lot to get it going, but once it's going, then you're clicking on all cylinders. And I really saw that after my first year at Mississippi State and Pitt. You're trying to get everything in line, and it's not going to happen overnight. And you're going to have to be persistent and make a plan. And a lot of the time, when you're taking a director role, administration or whoever's like, all right, what's your first 30, 60, 90 days? Like, what do you want to get accomplished? And you should probably just think like, and then beyond that, it's like year one to year three, what do you want to get accomplished? And so I think, yeah, you have to be patient. Things take time. And yeah, if you're out there and super frustrated in a position, you're only 3 months in, be patient. Think about the flywheel concept. You're just trying to get the wheel going, and it takes a lot. So that was the big one that I really carried over. What about you?
So the flywheel one didn't grab me as much as getting the right people on the bus, and then you can dictate your path. But if the right people aren't on the bus, it doesn't matter where you go. They're not going to like it. And then it also dug into a little bit that you may have all the right people on the bus, but you may have to adjust their seats. You may have to find different roles that they could be more successful at than what they're currently in. And the role I have now on my day job is you just can't get rid of people. Once they hire on, they're pretty much there for life. It takes an act of God to get rid of them. So when you're reading that book and you're looking at it, well, I know who's on the bus. I can't kick them off the bus. So now I have to figure out how to get the seating chart in an order that will let us go where the company wants us to go or where I feel we should go, whatever the case may be. So that's the part that really jumped out at me.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's a really, really good one because I just think about when I was kind of building out staffs, whether it was at Mississippi State or Pitt. If you hire the right people, they want to continue to grow and evolve and take on new responsibilities. So I love the thought of moving them into different seats because yeah, I want to know that if I take a position at a spot, like there's room for growth and projectability. And those are the people that I want on my bus that are pushing the envelope, wanting to like move up in the ranks. It's okay if not everyone wants to be like a director or a head person. Maybe their goal is different than mine, but you want to make sure that you're always challenging your staff, giving them new responsibilities. Like, okay, hey, last year you were over like the volunteer interns internship curriculum. This year I want you to be over the paid interns internship curriculum because that's going to be a higher level of thinking. And then, hey, now you're the assistant director. Help me do evaluations for some of the full-time staff, like the assistants. So yeah, it comes down to if you want the right people on the bus, they're going to want to continue to learn and grow, and continue education is going to be important to them, and having some type of professional development money. Or maybe you can bring, like I tried to bring conferences to Pitt when I was there. So it gave everyone an opportunity to learn and grow. So yeah, I love the concept of getting the right people in the seats, but then also you can, depending on the staff that you have. And that's why for me in my last two director roles, I always tried to hire people that complemented my skill set and personality well. If everyone had the same personality as me, oh my gosh, that would be insane. So I need someone that's gonna kind of balance me out. If I'm super extroverted, maybe I need someone that's a little bit more introverted, and maybe if I don't do well in coding, like let me hire somebody that's really good at coding for some of our AMS stuff and things like that. So I think, yeah, surrounding yourself with people that complement your skill sets and so you're a well organized and oiled team.
What you hit on there was also another part of the book that I really liked was it talked about your really good boardrooms or your really good meeting rooms could have very fierce debates. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everybody walked out knowing what they had decided on and everybody had the vision in mind of where they were going. So behind closed doors, you can really argue some stuff out. And for whatever reason, I enjoy that part of life. So that stuck out to me is I don't mind debating or arguing a little bit, but at least everybody could do that, no hard feelings, and then hey, this is the direction we're going to go.
I think small conflicts are so important because if you're not having like little small conflicts or disagreements along the way, that's going to end up building into one massive conflict. And that makes me think too, when you talk about boardrooms, I read a book because in the past I was in charge of setting up so many meetings. I was like, man, I gotta be better with how I'm like organizing meetings. And it was like, why meetings suck. I remember John Waggle, I think he was the one that recommended some meeting books to me. It might have been this one or another one, but or maybe it was The Art of Gathering too. A couple meeting books. If you guys organize a lot of meetings, check those out. But it was like, all right, if you're having a meeting and you're really trying to like get things done and make decisions, if I bought a pizza and brought it to the meeting, one pizza, that should be able to feed, like give everyone a couple pieces around the table, which means there's about six people in the meeting. If it goes over six, like you can think about probably meetings you sat in when there were like, you were in like a film meeting room and there was like 20 of you and someone was doing a presentation asking for feedback and everyone's just like getting quiet and doesn't want to say anything. And it's like, no, like if you want to have a real meeting, try to like limit the amount of people in there so people aren't afraid of giving real feedback. And I love the thought of just like keeping it real. Like let's keep it real. Let's have a good relationship. Like don't take anything personal. Like it's truly professional. We can walk out of here and still be like good and cool, but for the essence of the meeting and getting things done, like let's go about our business here. So yeah, to figure out how many people you should have in a room, if the pizza can feed you, then you should be good to go. If one pizza isn't gonna service, then you should probably maybe see some people out. Just if you want to like have some real conversation to get things done.
Yeah, because if the meeting room gets too big, all you do is start airing out people's gripes, and it's not truly a debate of how to make things better. It's just listening to everybody complain about the aspects of their day that they don't like.
Yeah. So really getting the right people in there, whether it's in the meeting room or on the bus, is going to be really, really important.
Now, with all the athletes that you've worked with through collegiate to professional, you've ran into all sorts of personalities, and it's probably taken multiple strategies to learn how to work with those athletes on a personal level. What have you kind of honed in that helps you the most get to know that athlete and get moving in the direction you need to go the quickest?
I think the first thing, and even I mean, working in professional baseball, there's not only getting to know them, but like a lot of guys, their first language is Spanish. So that's the other loophole of how can I meet this player where they're at? Can I, like for the Spanish speaking guys, can I learn a few Spanish words that makes them feel a little bit more at home? But in the position I'm at now, I really just try to go into the conversation. Of course, one, shake their hand, like make good eye contact, let them know that I care, ask some questions about them. A lot of time I'll ask questions around like, all right, like, hey, what training have you liked in the past? What's made you feel really good in the weight room? What has made you not feel really good in the weight room and create pain? I just try to ask and some really good questions and be super curious. And with that, like when you're asking questions and trying to get to know them as a person and a professional, whether it's like, hey, what are we working on our swing or pitching wise, spin rate, whatever it may be. Yeah, just showing curiosity and that I care is the best first step. And one thing with pro sports is usually you're working with guys, you're not having like one big massive group all at one time. It's a little bit more of subgroups. So it allows you to build relationships and talk with them a little bit more. And I started in January here, so that allowed me to get to Houston and get to know some of the guys that were living here and playing for the team before I even showed up in spring training when you see everybody at that point. So it's kind of nice to have a subgroup before the really big group. But I think, yeah, just asking questions, getting to know them as people and athletes. Just be a good listener. I think I have to remind myself of that because I'm very extroverted. I talk probably way too much, but I'm like, man, you know what? People just appreciate when you kind of sit back and listen, like hear them out. It means a lot.
I actually had a note on that because you talked about that in the Captains and Coaches podcast is we all want to talk. We're coaches. We all want to coach people through things and help them find it faster. But sometimes that's the last thing that needs to happen. Sometimes a little bit of refrain and stepping back and watching how guys move and watching how they communicate and what they want to do could actually create more growth sooner.
Definitely. And I think like if somebody asks you a question about something, do your best to one, take interest, and hey, if they're asking me about like red light therapy, and maybe I know some things, but I like want to go back and find even more things. Like just do your best job of being like a resource to your athletes. And they ask a question, like don't shoot it down. I think sometimes people are like pretty rude off their like, why are you thinking about that? Or that's really dumb. And it's like, no, like clearly they're curious about something and they're asking you a question. So if you're interested in it, I'm like interested in it. And let's make a deep dive and I'll kind of give you the best answer based off what I can find research wise and everything else to get you going in the right direction. So I think just staying curious is always something that I'm telling myself of reading new material and just being a weapon in regards to helping these guys or gals out.
And there's always a feeling that as a coach, you're supposed to know it all, but you can't know it all. So that conversation about, hey, I have only looked into it a certain amount, give me a little bit of time. We'll dig into this. We'll figure out an answer that works for you one way or another, and we'll go from there. I think that goes a long ways in a lot of circumstances.
And it means a lot because I think a lot of professionals that we've all worked with, they like to just stay in a box. It's like, this is what I know. I'm only going to do these things because this is what I know. I'm never going to venture outside of the box. And if if you think about the evolution of like S&C and sports science, like if I was doing the same programming that I was doing 10 years ago and not evolving with the field. So I think just continue to push yourself, like have your foundation, like know that I kind of function off these principles, but you should always be curious of what's out there and always be, again, like for me, I'm auditing my systems, like could I be doing this better for my current state of the state? And maybe what I do with a major league baseball team versus what I do with a college baseball team looks different because the schedule's different. So you just have to do your homework of like the clientele that you're working with, what's the competitive schedule look like, what are the KPIs of my sport? Really just kind of pulling back the layers to give your athletes and coaches the best product.
From listening to you talk today and some of your other podcasts that you've done, it feels like you are really in touch with your why, being a player asset, helping them find the things that they want to do, like that drives you. How long did it take for you to understand your why? And then how do you keep that front and center every day when you show up to the clubhouse?
Yeah, I think even an interesting question I've gotten in the past too is, do I coach my male athletes different than my female athletes? Which I never really thought about until someone asked me it. I was like, oh, that's really interesting because I've worked with both in a lot of different, like whether it's men's soccer, women's soccer, volleyball, football, so sometimes I think, and clearly I'm like a woman, but I think women sometimes emotionally need a little bit more support in regards to like maybe going into a lift and building confidence in them emotionally versus like a lot of my guys, like they technically just want to know what to do. Like I think when I work with pit wrestling, it's like, all right, how can I bench more? Like what do I need to do from a setup standpoint? So everything was very technical versus maybe the women were a little bit more like emotional coming in, giving them some confidence and building them up, but still giving them, of course, all the technical cues. So I think about that from like a my evolution of quote unquote my why is just I think it's great that I've been able to work with a lot of different diverse populations of athletes from all over the world. So and different cultures and things like that. But I mean my why is just I remember we had an athletic director at Pitt, Heather Like. It's like I'm approaching my athletes and like when we were in the college setting as if like how would I want if I had kids, how would I want my kids to be taken care of? If this was my daughter or my son, you need to take care of them and get the most out of them. So I always try to approach everyone that I'm training that like my dad just had back surgery, so I'm trying to like give him all the information and resources that I can get to help him like rehab and do this and do that. So it's like clearly I care dearly about my dad, but like I should be caring a whole heck of a lot about every person that I'm working with. So I think if you kind of frame the mindset of like, I want to mold this person into somebody that like is going to be strong and healthy and compete well in their sport, but just, yeah, I always try to approach my why is truly like get comfortable, be uncomfortable because I should always be learning and evolving to give the best products to my athletes and or my family, if they're rehabbing from something. So I think if you kind of like approach things that way, then you're going to care a whole heck of a lot. And yeah, I want to win. So I need to get my athletes right at the end of the day.
Well, those two things, wanting to win and getting your athletes right, leads me, I guess, to this next question. So, the role that mental performance coaches play in your program and for yourself, even too, integrating the psychology of it all on top of everything else. Do you guys bring in people from the outside that helps with that? How do you create a balanced athlete with the right mental approach and the right physical approach?
I would say, I mean, I've been super, super lucky to work with a lot of really good mental performance coaches like Angel Brutus when I was at Mississippi State. She was a great resource when it came to like doing some onboarding education for the freshmen of like even like conditioning tests of like, oh, I get a lot of performance anxiety before I do the beep test. Like, how do I manage this? Or when I was at Pitt, someone that I always like rely or lean on is Bernie Holiday. He actually works with the Pirates now, but he helped with some of our teams at Pitt and Pitt volleyball. But he made me think about stress. So I know like we all do these like wellness questionnaires. He made me, as soon as we all hear the word stress, we like stress out. I'm like, oh my gosh, stress. Like my heart rate's going up. Like my palms are starting to sweat. And I think we tried to start looking at it as like Then we were talking about good stress and bad stress. And then we were trying to find different words to describe that in our like wellness questionnaire as, all right, we should call this challenge and threat. So like challenge is good stress. Like challenge is like I was challenged in the classroom today. Like I learned a new concept that was challenging. Or today practice was challenging because I was working on a new skill. But then threat is like, okay, something's threatening me in regards to my boyfriend, my grandma's sick. But I thought that us working with a mental performance coach for our like wellness questionnaires, when we started to word it that way, it was helpful for our athletes to look at and be like, all right, like when I'm challenged, that's a good thing. Like I want to be challenged. I want to be pushed outside my comfort zone. I think sometimes in in some of our workplaces, whatever else, like people, if we're challenged, everyone almost sees it as a bad thing. It's like, no, like if I'm getting under the bar and I'm about to front squat, I know this is gonna be a challenge. Like, I love that. You know, how do I embrace that? And sometimes people say like embrace the suck or whatever, whatever language works for you. Love that. But I thought that that was really helpful when we were doing our wellness questionnaires of just starting to approach like life is stressful, whether you're a college athlete, professional athlete, or adulting, like but how are you going to manage that stress is what's going to allow you to be super successful or possibly just average, you know? So figuring out how to manage that for your athlete population. Like I haven't worked too much with high school athletes or just younger athletes, but I've worked a lot of like camps and things like that. So I'd be really curious to hear the new generation coming up, quote unquote, like how they're seeing. My husband has some nieces and nephews, so I talk to them about all their crazy things. But yeah, how to approach that as well would be really intriguing.
I don't want to keep you all afternoon, so I'll just hit you with a few more and then we'll let you enjoy your evening. I know life around your house has to be hectic. You've got baseball, your husband's got football, your schedules are probably opposite the majority of the time. So, in an effort to respect that, I wonder your husband works with the Texans, you work with the Astros. What, if any, conversations have led you to cross ideas that you could implement maybe on your side or he's implementing on his side that you have picked up and worked on together?
I think our skill sets are are different, so I think that's great. And it kind of goes back to like different people on your bus. You know, he works in the reconditioning, return to play space. And he's worked in biomechanics and sports science and S&C. So it kind of goes back to like, don't be a one-trick pony. And he's really good at sprint mechanics. And he played baseball actually for a long, long time growing up. So I've been picking his brain a bunch on some baseball stuff and I sucker him into coming to some baseball games. So I always like to see his lens of when he's watching the game and watching my guys move. Like, hey, give me some feedback. What are your thoughts? You know, what are you seeing from your seat? Because you're not with them every day. But yeah, we definitely go down some rabbit holes of it's been great my first year working in professional sports full time to have him as a resource of he's worked in professional sports now for multiple years. So I'm like, hey, I'm running into some of these challenges. Like, did you see this in your first year? Like when you made the transition from college to pro and just, I mean, even some of the rules and regulations of things you're allowed to do or not allowed to do as you kind of like switch into these different like from college football to the NFL and OTAs and yeah, just like as much as you think things are similar and like college baseball and pro baseball, it's still very, very different because we play twice as many games, let's say. But yeah, I think he's just been a really good resource to balance me out. I want to gain more knowledge in the return to play and reconditioning space. I think that's gonna like again, I'm always trying to cultivate and build my skill set out. And just some of the sprint biomechanics, base running is really important to us. So just trying to dial that in. But yeah, another great resource to have under my roof, that's for sure.
Now, I had heard you talk about this, and we'll get close to wrapping this up, but I think this was pretty unique because there again, it goes to challenge and threat idea. But why is it important to put yourself in processes or meetings or rooms or things like that where you're not really ready to be in there and the people look at you a little funny when you walk in, like what are they doing here? But to build the career you want to build, you have to throw yourself into that and handle the stress of that. How were you able to do that through your career that has helped you get to where you are now?
I mean, I would say I had a really great mentor at Clemson, being Rick Franzblau, and he's still there. But one thing he taught me as a young professional, as I was going from intern to GA to assistant director with him, was he's like, "All right, Steph, you want to be a director? I'm going to start taking you to director meetings." So whether it was we were building a new facility, I went and sat in on that, and I saw everything that I didn't know, like in questions to ask, and then hey, let's go to the budget meeting. And you can hear me kind of talk through that with administration. I was like, oh my gosh, at least I'm seeing it. And I can hear the questions he's asking and how they're kind of interacting, admin and strength coach. And so I'm really grateful that I had a mentor that knew what my end goal was to be a director, and he was willing to take me with him into these meetings and vouch for me. He's like, "Hey, is it okay if I bring Steph with me? Like, she just wants to learn more about this." Like, he didn't have to do that as a director. So I think when you're picking your internship spot, make sure you're really looking at who's the leadership role, who's in that role, how are they going to cultivate you, how have they cultivated other interns in the past, has he had people that have gone on to be directors and so on and so forth. So I think, yeah, just really putting yourself in positions to be around people that are going to push you to learn and grow on the staff. And whether it's just like the athletic trainers, the strength coaches, or your PTs or your dietitians, but yeah, you should force yourself to get a little bit uncomfortable. And if you have an inkling like, hey, I think I should possibly go to this. I know I'm not going to really know anybody. And I think that's the one thing that I've done a really good job of throughout my career is I've like gone to conferences when I was just going by myself. I'm like, I don't know anybody. Like I even went and spoke in Australia, the CSCCA and the ASCA, I think it's called. They do like a speaker swap, and they're like, "Hey, Steph, would you want to do the swap and go to Australia?" And I was like, "Oh man, like I'm going to a whole other culture on the other side of the world. And I'm speaking to them, and they don't really have like a college system, so I have to study like what's the Australian system set up like, and made me super uncomfortable. And I met so many different people that I would have never met if I just stayed in my US bubble. So they talked me into making a LinkedIn. So I was like, everyone's like, what's your LinkedIn? I was like, I don't have a LinkedIn. So got a little better in that regard. But like, because I got in the field knowing nobody. Like clearly my parents don't do anything in sports. Like I was just a college athlete. And I was like, let me try to do this. But the fact that I had pushed myself to go to some of these conferences where I knew I wasn't gonna know anybody, but I put myself out there and introduced myself. I'm like, all right, if I can at least like follow up with five people after the conference that I met, and then that turns into 10 to 15, and then your tree's getting bigger and bigger, your network's growing. But yeah, it's super uncomfortable, but thrust yourself out there. I'm kind of like feel a little bit further along in my career, and I just spoke at a conference down at IMG, and it was just great to see like some young people like coming up and introducing themselves to me, and I want to like take the time to can like continue to evolve and kind of give back now like the people did to me when I was coming up in the field.
With what you'd mentioned in there, I'll make this the last question and let you enjoy your afternoon. But getting the homework in, doing your preparation for the things that you're getting ready to do. I know daily, like you're doing now, your off season homework to get ready for the next season, but you just talked about going to a conference in Australia and you had to do a deep dive into how do they bring their athletes up. The importance of getting all your homework done and presenting that in a way that people can see you different. When did you learn how important it was to put that extra little bit of time in and how much it meant to people when you did that?
What I did, and I got some good advice from a friend, but they had told me, they're like, hey, Steph, before you go over there, it would be really good if you presented to like a fellow Aussie, like an Australian friend. So luckily I had a couple colleagues that one that worked for Catapult, another one that was working with the Penguins as well. And I was like, all right, I did the presentation for them. And I was like, I want you guys to poke holes in this because I don't want to look like a complete crazy US person going over there. So I think if you know you're going somewhere and you have somebody in your network, again, that's like from Australia, it's like, hey, do this presentation. They'll give you some really great feedback. And that only gives you so much more confidence when you go over to whatever country you're going to speak in. And I think I did Art of Coaching, Brett Bartholomew. He has like speaker school with him and like Becca Gold. And that speaker school, I did it before I went over there because I knew this was going to be a whole new challenge from a presentation standpoint. So it goes back to investing in yourself, whether it's that or conferences to best prepare yourself and put yourself in a place to reflect and be a great representation for like whatever university you're at, but also for yourself too.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it, and getting better all the time is just something you have to chase. When you think you've done enough homework, just do a little bit more, and it pays big dividends.
Definitely. You just want to feel confident when you're going into it because, I mean, there's always going to be something that goes wrong in a presentation, right? Like the clicker doesn't work or like the lights get messed up in the meeting hall or so you have to like prepare yourself to know there's going to be one or two things that are going to go off the rails, but like what can I control? Can I check the videos in my presentation before I like get up on stage and make sure they're all like playing with sound? And so I think yeah, just making sure you're bulletproofing your process for sure.
Well, Coach, this was amazing. I appreciate all the time. I know what a hectic schedule can do. So that you would sit down, find some time, and be so gracious. I really appreciate it.
No, I really enjoyed this. Thanks so much for having me on. I should have gotten a better backdrop like yours, but I will work on it for round two if we have one. So
Well, you did go and get the hat, so that's a lot
that's
right
true.
there in
The
its own
hat, I
self.
was
The
like,
hat looks great.
yeah, we gotta have the hat vibes going on. And you got the Texas shirt, so this is quality.
I've got one of my kids getting ready to go down there to throw javelin, and so
So,
on the back, my wife got a picture of him, made a silhouette. This was for his signing day. Um, so
yeah,
she she actually made this. So if I can turn around without screwing everything up, I'll show you real quick before I let you go.
I'm excited. Whoa, Jacobs, let's go. I love that.
So the javelin silhouette is actually him,
That's so cool.
and so she
Shout out
made.
to your wife.
Yeah, she got so good on cricket, I can't even believe it. Like I'll come up with these crazy shirt ideas, and she'll go to work on the art, and I'll come home from work one day, and it'll be laying there, and she's killed it. So yeah,
So awesome. Yeah, I got lucky when I was at Mississippi State. We had some pretty good javelin throwers like Anderson Peters and some others. So yeah, got lucky to be there at a good time.
he he spent a lot of time figuring out where he wanted to go, and I can't even imagine the stress on those athletes when you've got 6 7 big time schools offering you. How do you decide what's the best for your career? I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And now money's involved. Back in the day when I was I was making a decision, I was like, oh, this is too shabby. But yeah, I couldn't imagine nowadays for sure.
Well, before we get down another rabbit hole, Coach, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.